Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is Beyond Brilliance, talking about the intelligence of our other than conscious awareness that we can tap as a rich well and resource of wisdom and insight. So before we get started, let's just take a minute to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing and invigorating, enlivening every cell, every organ, and bringing vital life energy throughout your body and being. And as you exhale any stress, fatigue, tension, negativity. And now let's just gently take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it, and this time imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, enlivening, enlightening, and illuminating every cell and every molecule, every electron, and just expanding out into the world beyond. As you exhale any remaining fatigue, negativity, stress, or tension. And now let's gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel that remarkable, amazing sensation that brings you present to your body right here, right now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So good to be here with you. Good morning, Robert. Good morning, Irma. Good morning, Gia. How wonderful to be here with all of you. So we're kind of talking about the miracle of the subconscious mind. It's often called the subconscious. I choose to call it the other than conscious. Good morning, Suzanne and Rosalind. Great to have you guys here. We're talking about the often untapped brilliance that we have. The topic is beyond brilliance. So beyond our normal conscious waking state, what is accessible to us. And when we think about this altered state or other dimensions of consciousness, what comes to mind for me is people like Einstein, who had their brilliant insights in these altered states of awareness, a certain focused sense of presence and thought, and allowing yourself to move into these expanded states, or to be gaining information from the broader field. And this brings to mind conversations around identity, because when we allow ourselves to disentangle ourselves from our notions of who we are and the things, ideas, beliefs that bind us into certain personas or identities, when we release that or hold those with open hand, for instance, then our capacity to cogitate, to think beyond the boundaries of those constraints also expands. Good morning, Alicia. I don't believe I've seen your name here before. Welcome. It's great to have you joining us. So we're talking about beyond brilliance and how I think it's not even necessarily letting go of identities as much as shifting a focus from whatever those identities are to the broad expanse of possibility or potential in the universe. So how does that happen? I don't know. Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry. For me, um, I noticed that I can access. Good morning, Dennis. Great to have you here. And Andrea, welcome, welcome. I noticed that I can access these states oftentimes when I'm semi sleeping and when I am breathing deeply, and breathing deeply calms my body. As I relax my body, I'm releasing resistance physically. As I release physical resistance, my mind is freer to connect with broader ideas, and images flow and ideas flow, and I hear conversation in my head, and and I could ask a question. The idea with asking a question is to ask it again with open hand, like I need, not pleading or begging, but to present a question, for instance. So Rosalind says, what is accessible to us? An indestructible happiness. Oh, I love it, Rosalind. I strive every day to discern and how to expand into greater awareness. Yes. So me too, me too. And this morning, I guess I woke up at around 2:30, and I spent from 2:30 till about 6 in kind of an altered state of semi-wakefulness, semi-sleep. Had some very interesting sorts of dreams, and still was able to ask myself some questions that um, stimulated thought. And one of those questions is, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing? Because and then another question was, what would I see if I saw what is there? What would I see if I saw what there is to see? I think this question of what is accessible to us is seeing the unseen. Um, and what am I willing to see? What am I ready to see? What am I open to see? Am I open to see what's really there? Am I open to find what would it be like if I were open to seeing what's really there? What might, and the word see doesn't necessarily mean visual. It might be a dawning awareness. Like what awakening is available to me. What One of the, what I got to see, actually, what was interesting is that I was doing session work on myself in this semi-waking state, and what came up was, what I allowed myself to see and experience was emotion around different experiences in my past. Some traumas or losses of friendships, or um, issues around self-trust, uh, related to relationship. All kinds of things came percolating up. It doesn't, the question doesn't necessarily get answered with uh, metaphysical insights, but what I noticed is that as I allow, and I noticed this with my clients as well, as we allow ourselves to not be so attached to our position about things, whether we want to call that identity or beliefs or self-defense or whatever, when we allow ourselves not to be so attached to who we believe ourselves to be, we can maybe have a different perspective on ourselves. Welcome, welcome, Christina. So good to have you joining us. We're talking about Beyond Brilliance and this incredible vast awareness that's available to us, just just beyond our standard functioning consciousness. So Rosalind says, my broader ideas arise from shows on EWN like the Core Connection. Oh, you're so sweet. My connection to calm is strongest just before bed or conscious meditation during the day. Awesome. GP Walsh, non-duality has helped me release attachments. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I am still unfamiliar with the work of GP Walsh. So maybe one of these days I will dig in and check it out. I find that this expansive awareness, like if I allow myself to suspend judgment of myself, and I think that I see this in my clients, when we as humans allow ourselves to suspend judgment, we can see things more clearly. We can recognize the dynamic of situations. We can recognize our role in the dynamic in situations when we don't feel that we have to protect ourselves from seeing something that we might not like because we're suspending judgment. So we can recognize, oh wow, I see where I had a role in that. I see where I reacted. I was reactive, or I was acting out of a patterned response based on a trauma I had in my life or whatever. Or you can see, wow, I handled that really with tremendous grace, where you might not have otherwise recognized that, or you may recognize that someone else, if you're not feeling defense, defensive or at the effect of uh, somebody feeling hurt by somebody else, you might be able to, in this more expansive state that's not connected with the identity that felt wronged, you might be able to see more clearly what the whole dynamic was. From the vantage point of the other person, you might see why they were reactive in a way that you wouldn't otherwise perceive. Because when we step away, when we step into this broader sense of awareness, we are not being our perception isn't being dictated by our attachments. So what you're talking about, Rosalind, the attachments. So and also when we get into this state of non-attachment, we have, it's kind of like if you think about a balloon, you're holding a balloon by a string, right? That balloon has a limited area in which it can float because you're holding it by a string. This is us holding our awareness, holding our awareness attached to our beliefs and our identities and our experiences, our reactivity, our attachments. And when we let go of the balloon can fly all over the place, right? And when we are able to let go of those identities, those things that are keeping us in a loop of reactivity or a loop of thought in some way or another, then we have access to a much greater atmosphere to be able to pull from. And Robert says, in the past, I used to be able to tap into my beyond brilliant self instantly. Nowadays, I seem not to be able to tap into that state so easily. So, Robert, it sounds to me like, just from what you've shared with us, that you've been through a lot, and one of the things that has arisen is a lack of trust. And I think that part of this state is coming into a place of unity within ourselves somehow, I'm so glad to hear you're slowly getting back into your full power. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm wondering if you agree that it might have to do with some issue around trust and self-trust. And it's really interesting. I had a great conversation with somebody yesterday talking about self-trust and lack of self-trust. And when there's lack of self-trust, our world is very much more about ourselves. At least that's my experience. Because what are we doing? We're constantly self monitoring and calibrating and calculating and evaluating and all like, did I do it right? Did I say it right? Did I respond in a way that was present? Thank you, Robert. Yes, this whole thing about accessing that external atmosphere is about trust, because again, this idea of self-trust, when we don't trust ourselves, we're constantly calibrating and monitoring, and interestingly, it's all about us all the time. When we don't trust ourselves, it's all about us all the time. Can I trust that person? It's like, I'm talking about me, I'm talking about me, we're talking together, I'm talking about me, but enough about me. What do you think about me? Right? That's when we have lack of self trust. It's all about calibrating everything in the context of me. When we have self trust, we can let go of that. We don't have to be constantly monitoring, constantly calibrating, constantly calculating, constantly adjusting and course correcting all the time, because we're just really present. So Robert says, and it might do with being too attached to outcomes in the physical realm. It could be. It could be. I think, there's a level of trust that when we achieve it, this sense of self trust and integration, that there may be less attachment to outcomes, also because we're trusting that it's going to come out right. And Rosalind says, not a Pete from Maggie yet. Yes, well, yesterday she was nonstop, and today she's quiet. It's really quite amazing, right? I don't know what to attribute it to, but yesterday all day, not just here in the morning, but all day, she was just constant. So yeah, thank you for your love for her, Rosalind. She's she's a bright light in my life too. So Christina says, I think I have a tendency to blame myself first. Exactly. So this is lack of self trust, right, Christina? Because you'll blame yourself. It's about you, right? Because you don't trust yourself, instead of questioning, or look, being able to observe the situation from a broader space, the first tendency is to blame yourself, right? Because there is this lack of self trust. And sometimes, and I think I have the tendency to blame myself first, and sometimes it is mine. Other times, when I remember to pull back, there you go, I can see better that sometimes it may not be something that maybe I'm just one of a long line of people treated in this pattern behavior. Yes, so I think when we have the ability to step back, um, then we have the ability to see the patterns without the blame. So that's the distinction. That's really where we want to get to, like, to get to a place of compassionate understanding for ourselves as well as for others. And Gia says, you're so right, Mira. The self trust is so important. I feel so self absorbed in monitoring my thoughts and my feelings through the day. I've been there. I know what that is. Irma says, what does self trust look like? Good question, Irma. So I think that the question is how to get from here to there, with self-trust? How does one get from a place of lack of self-trust to a place of self-trust? What does self-trust look like? Hmm. Um, Self-trust looks like, I think it may show up in one respect as owning the things that we have judged ourselves for in a certain respect. Um, so being honest with ourselves about ourselves, and that doesn't mean things like saying I'm a terrible person, because that's probably really not honest. Um, what might be honest is I've done some things that I am not proud of, and not necessarily not being subject to the guilt and shame and blame of that, to focus compassionate understanding upon ourselves, to find our place of healing and unity with ourselves, and then recognizing I've had some lapses of judgment. I've had these, these situations that I'm not forgiving myself for. Find forgiveness for oneself, to recognize that we're all human. And that, I believe, is the beginning of self-trust, when we're honest with ourselves about who we have been, without the judgment, like to observe, wow, okay, I see there was a lot of negativity, or there was a lot of insecurity, and as a result of that insecurity, I see that a lot of these behaviors were happened, and they're things that um, I don't hold in my highest values, and I can choose now differently, to be honest with oneself, I think, is the beginning of self-trust, and to recognize where we may have lied to ourselves, and to then, if there are corrective actions to take those actions, perhaps, there to if we're always beating ourselves up, how can we trust ourselves? If we're lying to ourselves all the time, how can we trust ourselves? If we don't listen to our inner guidance, how can we trust ourselves? And I think that self-trust, I hope that starts to answer the question, Irma. Elaine says, letting go of survival, the fear of surviving or not, stands in front of true seeing from the eyes of the heart's knowing, the from the eye of the heart's knowing, a human process for those that choose to risk not knowing, as one remembers who you really are. So I'm just going to tease that apart a little bit before I read the rest of it. Um, Elaine, you always have such rich contributions. So for sure, letting go of surviving, um, like that's an easy thing, right? It's fundamental to us as human beings that we are oriented towards survival, right? And when we recognize that, when we come to a place of trust, we are kind of trusting that we will that things are going to work out, that we will survive, or we won't, and that either way it's going to be okay. So choosing to risk not knowing, as one remembers who you really are, that's that's such a poignant key. So to risk not knowing as we remember who we truly are, beyond belief or identities and titles. And that's the fact of it, is recognizing that we are not our beliefs, our identities, or our titles, that we are spirit in physical form, that we are life happening through this physical form, that whatever the construct is that you connect to, that is the essence of what animates you in this world. It's not your beliefs or your titles or your identities that animate you in this world. The beliefs, identities, and titles are merely robes that we embrace and then start to believe, and sometimes then they own us rather than us wearing them as vestments that we can take off at will. And Elaine continues by saying, by recognizing for me what truly has value to me, freedom comes when one truly lets go of the false self, as awareness ends all illusions of being separate. And this amazing world of illusions, a beautiful journey of reflections. Whew, it's a lot. Elaine, add punctuation so I can say it more clearly to people, because you always have these brilliantly beautiful insights. So, yes, so the illusion of separateness also is something that we maintain by holding on to our identities and our beliefs and our titles, and lots of shoulds and demands come along with all of that. And Robert says, yes, we tend to be dependent on other people's thoughts about ourselves, trusting others more than we trust ourselves. I believe that the only confirmation we need is our own, as by going within, our higher self knows what is best, not others. And there's something really rich in that, Robert, or a lot really rich in that, is that when we connect with that inner knowing, that inner presence that's from a place of balance rather than reactivity, we are able to discern what the truth is, or to gain our own guidance and perspective. So thank you for that. And Suzanne says, I'm at the point where I trust my intuition mostly. Well, I think that's a tremendous gift, Suzanne. That is self-trust ultimately, when we listen. So Irma, back to your question, what does self-trust look like? It means the foggy noise, we're able to listen through whatever the foggy noise to the whispers from our heart that guide us in life, and that we do listen. As we listen, those whispers become more perceptible. Gail, welcome. I don't believe I've seen your name here. Welcome. It's great to have you joining us. Gail says, when we step back, we can see the patterns and the triggers. Then we can consciously rewire our brains to create a positive new pattern of thinking. 100% true. When we step back, again, without judgment, with recognition and awareness rather than judgment, then we can recognize the patterns and the triggers, and we do have the ability from that place of calm centeredness to become more expansive in our ability to create new patterns or new ideas, new approaches. And Gia says, your journey, when you discuss it in glimpses, it makes me curious to know and learn more from you. Looking forward to building self-trust. I see how I trust everyone when I trust myself. and the actions of others don't bother, and I can remain in peace with everything when I trust myself. Exactly. Well, so here's the thing. When we trust ourselves, Gia, thank you, by the way. Thank you. But when we trust ourselves, we can trust ourselves to choose how we interact with others. When we listen to that inner voice, we can know what we can trust others to do or be. Um, so if you have shown me that you are okay with taking advantage of other people, then I can trust you to be consistent in that behavior and potentially take advantage of me as well. For instance, when we talk about trust, for especially trust for others, we get to say, well, what are we trusting them to do or be? And I think that that's the part of the equation that we often leave out. You know, I can trust myself to listen to myself. I can trust myself to be honest with myself. That's the biggest thing, I think, is being honest with ourselves. And once we're honest with ourselves, then we can trust ourselves to be honest with ourselves. And that's a huge start to where we can go with growing self-trust. Good morning, Lisa. So great to have you joining us. And Robert says, to Elaine, brilliantly said. I think I skipped it, Elaine. I apologize. Here I am back again to you. As we walk through, as you walk through your fears and face life as it is, you can prove to yourself that you can trust yourself. Exactly, honesty. And listen to yourself, and your day-to-day life is not about being right or wrong. It's about discovering the power that you have inside you to sustain and know what's best for you. And I agree with Robert, Elaine, absolutely brilliantly said. So as you walk through your fears and face life as it is, being honest with yourself, that's my addition. You can trust yourself and listen to yourself in your day-to-day life. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about discovering the power that you have inside you to sustain and know what's best for you. Yes, 100%. Suzanne says, yes, not dwelling on past mistakes because we are human. Exactly. So here's the thing, mistakes are feedback. You know, what we perceive as mistakes it's feedback. And it says, okay, well, this didn't work so well this time. We can take another approach and learn from this. And Christina says, I also can see it's easier to look when not experiencing a hostile, unsafe, abusive situation in the present moment. Sometimes our negativity does serve a purpose. So I can also see when it's easier to look when not experiencing a hostile, unsafe, abusive situation in the present moment. When we are experiencing a hostile, unsafe, abusive situation in the present moment, typically we are on high alert and looking at how we can defend and protect ourselves. And I agree, it's a whole lot easier when we're not in that kind of in danger. When we perceive that we're in danger, that's when we are most reactive, and sometimes in those situations we have the good fortune to be catapulted into this observer place where we can see clearly what's going on and what needs to be done and how to respond. You know, sometimes when we're in that space of danger, we're actually not reactive in a negative way, but we're like hyper focused and and are able to respond appropriately. And sometimes when we're in those situations, we're acting in a way that brings more of that situation. So when you say sometimes our negativity does serve a purpose, what I can relate to that is that there are times when our anger, for instance, serves a purpose. Um, you know, when sometimes in an attack, the an an attack back can stop a situation. That's not always true. I believe that there are times when our anger can serve us as long as we don't let it consume us, if we can use it rather than it using us. And the same with other, what we might perceive as negative traits, are not necessarily negative. I agree with you with that, Christina, that there are times when all things have their purpose, right? There's a season for all things. So um, Lisa says, that's a lesson I'm still working on. This is my year for truth and trust. Well, you know what? If you do that in a year, Lisa, congratulations. That's awesome. And I love that you're taking that on this year. And I think it's often a lifetime quest, is to, because there are moments when we fall in and out of trust, or we fall in and out of degrees of truth, and we get to keep recalibrating and readjusting and coming back to those places of integration and integrity, I think. So congratulations, Lisa. Good for you. And Christina says, yes, thanks, Mira. I think that part, what you said about trusting even the negative, is a good choice, or a good chance that is often left out when discussing that subject. Yeah, I know that I was experiencing being bullied at one point, and and it was really, really, really intense. And I just, at one point, I realized that the only way to combat this, it wasn't like a conscious, okay, I'm going to strategize here how to combat this. But the only way to come back at it was to come back at it stronger, like with a fury. And it stopped the onslaught, and shifted the dynamic. And I didn't have to stay in that place, but bringing up that fury was what saved me in that moment. And you might otherwise consider that that's negative. I think it was, in that moment, it was a powerful expression. So Rosalind says, what role does ego play in today's topic? GP Walsh says ego isn't always a bad thing, and that it serves a purpose. I think you guys have heard me say, I think it's good for us to befriend the ego rather than make a villain or an enemy of it. And I think that the beauty of ego is that we get to use it as a tool to navigate the world. It's when ego becomes our master rather than a tool of mastery, then it becomes a deficit. So I think when we're talking about connecting with our brilliance, ego becomes a non-conversation. Maybe we're detaching from all the things that are binding us, or loosening our hold on all those things, so that we can access a more expansive awareness. And so to be able to see things more clearly, we get to take the ego out of the picture in that moment. You know, just like we get to take our identities out of the picture, our beliefs out of the picture, to just see what is available to be seen, and make pure observation. Lisa says, and Rosalind, thank you. You always have wonderful questions, very thought-provoking questions. Lisa says, thank you, Mira. I've been working on it for a while, but it is necessary for me to move further. Good for you, Lisa. I think that there's room for us always to come more deeply into trust for ourselves, for our higher power, for the universe, for life itself. And as we step more fully into it, it doesn't mean, I think that the experience and understanding of trust gets deeper and deeper and deeper as we pursue it in our experience. You know, it gains dimensionality as we explore it more fully. At least that's my experience so far. I maybe the ultimate in trust is when we achieve some maybe enlightenment. Maybe that is the ultimate trust. I just had that thought, so I'm trying it on, and maybe you'll try it on and let me know what you think. You know, that's a working possibility. I don't even know if I'll say it's a hypothesis yet, but maybe there's um, some kind of relationship between awakening and trust, because perhaps it means letting go of the attachments um, to our ideas and beliefs. You know, and then what? And then what? That's a conversation for another day. That I look forward to with all of you. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for your heartfelt and authentic and deep thinking, and observations in our conversations. You enrich me so, and I am very, very grateful to you for that. And so that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. This is Maggie. And we go live every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. It is such a joy and privilege to be part of the Enlightened World Network. Amazing programming. Please check out the other wonderful, wonderful uh, people that are putting on all kinds of shows and meditations. And until we meet again, so much love to you, and hope to see you soon.